Welcome to Mid-Century Living, your weekly nostalgia podcast about the best of technology and culture from the mid-20th century.
Welcome to episode 48 of Mid-Century Living, the show where we talk all about the best of the mid-20th century and how to add the vintage vibes to your modern life. We are your hosts, Gonzalo.
And Jackie. Happy October, everyone! It's finally spooky season, and we've decided to celebrate with spooky topics all month long. So today we're talking about the making of the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland. But first, Gonzalo, how was your week?
My week was good. We had our first swim meet this week, which is always
cool.
fun, and it was at our school. And it's like we call it the inter squad or the green versus white because our school is green and white. So it's like basically like we divide our team into two and they have to swim against each other. But to me, it's more of like okay, how is it that the timer equipment works again? Me, because like it's this it looks like a Commodore 64, which for anyone out there who knows what that looks like, that's what my equipment looks like. And it's a bunch of buttons, and like I have a little sticky note that I wrote down stuff in like 2 years ago. That's like the step one, click here, step two, click there kind of situation. And I couldn't find my sticky note, and I was like, where's the piece of paper that I had in my hand last year? And anyway, that was my week. My week was the mess of setting it up, running the meet, and then trying to remember how to do stuff.
So the kids are all distracted, though, with their first meet of the season, so that's perfect.
Yeah, no one realized that I was in like, I guess until now, that I was like, an internal monologue was crap, what's this, what's that, what's this? So,
that's funny.
So yeah, my week basically, short story long, nope, other way around. Long story short, my week was consumed with swimming stuff. So, and then a little bit of mid-century because I did have to do some researching for our next episode because this is Jackie's episode.
Yes, this is my episode.
Yeah. So, but speaking of Jackie, how was your week?
It was fine. Honestly, it's just finalizing October plans. Basically, so I sounded excited about it last week, and I was, and this week I'm a little bit more stressed, but just basically because October is, right now, it's now, but, well, when this episode comes out, it'll be now, but while we're recording, it's in 3 days, so basically I've just been making lists of all the stuff I want to do and all the recipes I want to try. Like, it's so funny. I don't know if there are other people out there like this, but, like, October's my favorite month, and I just have so much stuff I want to do that, like, leading up to it, I start getting nervous that it's here and that, like, it feels like it's over already and I didn't, like, do anything, but it's not even happened yet. I'm just, like, preemptively nervous about not getting everything accomplished that I want to accomplish, and just like, oh my gosh, it's already October and I haven't done blah, 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 like, and it's not.
That's
it's
how
not
I feel about
October.
December.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet Christmas people are like that. I'm
Well,
so
yeah.
casual about Christmas because I put all of my energy into October that, like, by the time Christmas rolls around, I'm just like, there's a tree. And I feel, like, merry and bright, and I don't worry about it at all. Like, I just put up the tree and
I am Christmas
go about
people.
my business. You're Christmas people?
Yeah. But it's funny enough because my house doesn't get a lot of decorations. I have a tree and it looks nice, and I know it does because I put it up. But I decorate my mom's house because my parents have a lot of decorations. I mean, I'm telling you, it's like the North Pole throws up at my parents' house.
Nice.
And every year my mom's like, I don't know if I'm gonna put everything out, and I go, yeah, we are. And she goes, it's just so much work, and I go, that's fine.
You, like, show up in a jumpsuit with, like, bells on, like, ready to go. I don't need to do that again. But we're getting off topic because we're supposed to be spooky.
But your house is going to be decorated in a spooky fashion, and I feel like we should talk about another house that's decorated in a spooky fashion.
Indeed. What an excellent transition into today's topic. So, Gonzalo, what's your favorite ride at Disney, and why is it the Haunted Mansion?
Okay, so while I do love the Haunted Mansion, my favorite ride is Tower of Terror.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah, which is also creepy.
It is creepy.
Some might say scarier than Haunted
It
Mansion.
is. It is definitely scarier. I'm a baby and I can't ride that ride. I have to take the chicken exit. I love the queue. I feel like we've talked about this
I think we
before.
have
Like
talked
I'll
about
wait.
it, and I was about to bring that up too. I
Yeah.
love the queue as well.
But there is a very convenient at the end of all attractions. By the way, fun like pro tip for anyone going to Disney World. If you chicken out at before you load into the ride vehicle, there's a nice exit right there for you, and I call it the chicken exit. I think most people do. So you can walk. You can wait in line with your family and like just be like, okay, bye, and then leave like right at the end, and then go get a snack or something and wait for them to be terrified.
Yeah. My love of the Haunted Mansion, though, it comes more from the building. I mean, I
Hmm.
love the ride too. Don't get me wrong. It's really cool how it's done, and there's just so much to it, which we'll learn about.
We'll get into.
Yeah, but I love the outside of um at least. Well, I mean, I know all of them. They're all different, which is kind of cool too.
Mhm.
Um, but I like as a architect of a previous life, they're really cool buildings.
They are really cool buildings, and the Haunted Mansion actually probably is my favorite attraction at Disney,
I was
and
about to
you
ask
can
you.
tell because, well, yeah, I've got this poster right behind me, but also I'm just sort of assuming, I guess, a little forewarning for today's episode. The Haunted Mansion, the history behind the creation of this thing is really, really long. They spent almost 20 years Imagineering this attraction. So that's what I've
Mm.
decided to focus our episode on. So I'm kind of assuming that anyone listening to this already knows what the Haunted Mansion is and has been on it. And I'm not going to spend any time talking about like writing through it, the story of the actual attraction itself. All of
Yeah,
this episode is all about creating it and making the special effects and designing the exterior and like all that kind of like Imagineering level because there's plenty to talk about in just that.
hmm
So if you haven't been on the Haunted Mansion and you don't know what it's like, hopefully this will still be interesting and pique your interest, and you could go to YouTube and watch ride through videos if you need to. But for those of you who've already been on the ride and just want to know about the history, this episode is for you.
yeah. So buckle into your buggy.
Your
Um,
doom buggy.
yeah.
Thank you for saying that because actually, all of the information in today's episode came from doombuggies.com, which is the most detailed website about the Haunted Mansion you could ever want, ever. Literally anything you could ever think about that's even tangentially related, interviews, news clippings, anything ever is in this website. It is a rabbit hole to itself, and I did my best to try to condense it to one episode, but that's also why I had to cut so much stuff for time. But anyway, let's get to it. So
Yeah,
I
I'm
think we should
excited.
start at the very, very beginning, which is Walt's inspiration. Also, real quick, before we get into it, if you want more history on just Disneyland Park in general, don't forget to check out our two-part series. We did 2 episodes on it, and we'll put links in the show notes.
Yeah, and we also did the supercut.
Yes, and we also did a supercut where we just put all of that history together with less of our chit-chat. So if you're into that, you can listen to that version. But anyway, the Haunted Mansion origins begin in early 1950s, before work on Disneyland Park even began. So even before Disneyland Park had an official map, Walt always wanted a haunted house attraction in his theme park. But wasn't just going to be any carnival haunted house attraction. Just like with Disneyland itself, Walt wanted it to be the best and most innovative haunted house in the world. It was supposed to be this epic walkthrough attraction with tons of new special effects that the Imagineers will have invented specifically for this project. The Haunted Mansion wouldn't open until 1969, though. It took 19 years and 3 groups of Imagineers to finally build the haunted house attraction of Walt's dreams.
Wow.
So some of his early inspiration, yeah, I know it took forever. But some clues that Doom Buggies found as to where Walt probably got his like early idea for this particular haunted house. One, there was a actual haunted mansion in the town where he grew up called Sour Castle in Kansas City. So he grew up around that and was probably thinking about haunted houses a lot.
Like
Also, what?
like a real haunted house, or like a real haunted house
Yeah,
attraction.
like a house that was haunted.
Okay.
I mean, if you believe in that sort of thing.
Yeah.
There was a
Everything's real
house
too.
that was rumored to be haunted that he grew up very close to.
All right.
And more on if you believe in that sort of thing in next episode.
Yeah.
We also know that Walt was impressed with his trip to the Chicago Railroad Fair, which contained a convincing French Quarter square, which simulated an evening in New Orleans, so that'll come in handy later. And then also, Walt was a fan of a radio show called The Railroad Hour, which was a weekly series of comedies and dramas. And in July of 1952, in the midst of Walt's frenzied planning for Disneyland, the show presented an episode called The Pirate of New Orleans, which was an operatic telling of a Southern ghost story. So, um, Disneyland opens 1955, and by 1957, Walt's already trying to expand, and they got to work immediately planning a New Orleans Square, which is to be a new area between Frontierland and Adventureland that combined all of Walt's spooky inspiration we just mentioned. So, Walt was so excited about this idea that the area was even included on a 1958 souvenir map, but construction on the area didn't even begin until 1961, and the land itself wasn't open to the public until 1966.
So the first Imagineer assigned to the haunted house attraction was a man named Ken Anderson. He had been a layout artist, art director, and writer for the Disney Studios since 1934, and he had an architecture degree and was an art director for the Snow White and Seven Dwarfs. So I already like him because architect.
Mm-hmm.
Ken also designed the Sleeping Beauty Castle walkthrough diorama exhibit, and his most obvious contribution to the project was the look of the exterior mansion itself. So let's talk a little bit about the exterior of the house, right? So Ken had originally planned to make the mansion look old and run down, like your typical haunted house would look, but this got a no from Walt. Walt wanted an exterior of the haunted mansion to remain pristine. He famously said, quote, "We'll take care of the outside, but let the ghosts take care of the inside," end quote, which is a great quote. Ken's inspiration for the exterior was found in a book in the Walt Disney Studio Library titled Decorative Art of Victoria's Era, written by Francis Licton in 1950. Which also I want this book. The property was called the Shipley Lydekker House and was actually located in Baltimore. The photo was captioned Temple-fronted mid-Victorian mansion. It was flounced in crinoline fashion with a double row of iron lace porches.
I
And we'll have
included
to-
the photos for fun,
Yes.
but I'll have to post them on Instagram for everyone to see. But you can see like exactly like they nailed it. Like this
Yes.
is the house.
The house is beautiful. The concept art is amazing. And I love, like, I think the whole attraction works best because of the whole leave the outside pristine,
Mm-hmm.
and then the inside is where all the magic happens.
Yeah.
And also I love the fact that there is like an old house in Disney. Like it looks cool because it's a theme park. You're gonna find theme park looking things. So like it's like all of a sudden you're not in a theme park, you're in like a neighborhood, and it
Yep.
looks really cool.
It looks really cool. It looks like you could just move in.
Yes, and this design got approved right away. And then they actually ended up building the exterior facade in 1962 so that it would be there when the New Orleans squares opened. But the building sat empty while Imagineers spent the next several years trying to figure out what to do with the actual attraction. In total, Ken went through at least 6 different drafts of the proposal for his ghost house, each differing somewhat with various points of interest and story elements. Most of them were super dark. And some of the ideas that he presented to Walt were a story about a vicious sea captain named Gideon Gorilou, or Captain Gore for short, who had been posing as a nobleman in New Orleans until he murdered his bride in a fit of rage once she discovered his true identity, and then, in despair, hanged himself in the old house. Ooh, that is cool.
Right? And dark. Dark as
And
heck.
dark. In another, the house is inhabited by the Blood family, living in Bloodmere Estate. He kept the idea of a ghostly bride, but started to change the storyline to focus on her wedding party in the hereafter. He also then tinkered with the idea, including some Disney IP in the attraction, specifically the 1937 cartoon Lonesome Ghosts, and the Disney version of the Headless Horseman from the Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad.
Which would have been pretty cool.
That would have been really cool too, yes. By September 1957, Ken's version of the haunted house structure was fully designed, and he had each set and room built full-size at the Walt Disney Studios in Burbank so that the special effects could be tested, fine-tuned, and demonstrated for Walt Disney himself. Some of the effects that he worked on include a wall of portraits that would change, ghosts that follow you in a mirror, and trophy busts with movable eyes.
All of which should sound familiar to anyone who's been on the attraction.
Yes. But by 1958, the attraction still didn't have a story, and Walt Disney ended up moving Ken Anderson back to the animation department of the studio to help finish Sleeping Beauty, the film. In an interview, Ken said, quote, "I found out by trial and error that Walt's idea of the haunted house was different than mine was. I was trying to make a spooky house that would scare the hell out of you, and you'd never go on it again. Walt wisely realized that he had to have a haunted house that would entertain. So little by little, I eased out of the thing. It was too spooky." End quote.
Yep. So there's phase one. So now we're entering into Imagineering phase two. So in 1959, wet Imagineers Yale Gracie and Raleigh Crump were put on the Haunted Mansion project. Yale Gracie was taking the lead, and Raleigh Crump was mostly added as a assistant. So Yale Gracie was everyone's go-to guy for special effects back then. He became known for his inventive lighting and atmospheric effects, such as the simulated fire effect he created for Disneyland's Pirates of the Caribbean attraction. Walt used to call Yale Gracie his first illusioneer, due to the fact that Yale was so adept at figuring out ways to make the improbable seem easy and magic seem real. The focus of the development of the Haunted Mansion had turned away from the storyline and more toward the illusions. So Yale and Raleigh developed or conceptualized over 80 different special effects for the Haunted Mansion. The pair filled an entire soundstage with spooky tricks and traps. One fun fact that I cut for time, but I'm adding back in now, is once there was a night that they just decided to leave all the effects on overnight, and it scared the janitors, and they quit.
Oh, that's hilarious, though.
But one particular scene that the duo mocked up was actually based on Ken Anderson's Sea Captain. They devised an effect which featured the captain who had died at sea coming back home as a ghost. And for this, they used the Pepper's Ghost principle, which is a technique where an image of an object offstage is projected so that it appears to be in front of the audience. And this technique made it into the final attraction, but with different ghosts.
The Pepper's Ghost really could have its own
Yeah,
podcast.
for real.
Like, it's very technical, but it's actually really cool. And, like...
Some more effects that the duo came up with that can be found in the final attraction are a spring-loaded exploding ghost that would be triggered by an infrared beam and reassemble in seconds before the next tour group arrived. A realistic talking statue that was no more than a film projection on a static bust. And the inverted face illusion, which makes an immobile marble statue appear to turn and stare directly into the eyes of everyone in the room. Yale and Raleigh made some great strides towards bringing the Haunted Mansion off the drawing boards, but the attraction still needed a central theme or story to pull everything together. But unfortunately, the project stalled again in the early 1960s, while Disney had set his sights up on the upcoming New York World's Fair, the 1964 one, so all hands were on deck to get those projects completed. And for anyone curious, the projects that Disney included in the New York World's Fair were Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln, The Magic Skyway, It's a Small World, and the Carousel of Progress.
Yep. So after the World's Fair projects were done, Raleigh Crump started thinking about the mansion again. Raleigh was dissatisfied with what he considered to be a standard issue Halloween tropes and thought that it needed more surrealism. So he came up with a lot of unique ideas. Some of those are aquariums filled with disappearing fish, a candleman made of dripping wax, man-eating plants, and galleries filled with supernatural artwork. So after Walt considered Raleigh's creations, he decided that the attraction needed to have two portions: the main body of the Haunted Mansion and a queue space that would contain Raleigh's, quote, Museum of the Weird. So moving forward, while still disagreeing on the direction of the Haunted Mansion, the Imagineers continued to develop plans, design scenes, and test special effects. And then Walt Disney passed away on December 15th, 1966. So his death affected everyone who worked for and with him. But a more direct threat to the Haunted Mansion was that Walt had never made up his mind about the premise of the attraction. Raleigh Crump's Museum of the Weird concepts were rejected once Walt passed away, and his work developing the Haunted Mansion attraction came to an end as our last group of Imagineers took over the project.
So now we're entering Imagineering Phase 3, and this is when Mark Davis and Claude Coates were assigned to work on the project. They were also working on Pirates of the Caribbean at the same time. So while they were working on the Haunted Mansion, the duo disagreed on whether the ride would be frightening or funny. Davis, the artist most responsible for the gags and the characters in Pirates, felt that the Haunted Mansion would better succeed as a character-driven romp. He proposed a variety of mostly comical characters and thought the ride should be silly and full of gags. Coates, who was originally a background artist, wanted a scary adventure and produced renditions of moody surroundings like endless hallways, corridors of doors, and bleakly spooky environments. But in the end, it was Imagineer ex Atencio who was finally tapped to pull together a cohesive script from all of the ideas, concepts, and storylines that had been bandied about over all the years. The great success of X's script for Pirates made him the natural choice to pen a script for the Haunted Mansion. So Atencio set out to create a comical script that was also dark and scary, but not too scary. Ex Atencio submitted his first draft of the script on July 19th, 1968, and the Haunted Mansion as we know it comes together really quickly after that. The mansion finally opens to guests on August 12th, 1969.
Yay! We have completed. Like I put a name in it.
like,
They
like
have completed the mansion.
Finally, all these years later.
Yeah.
It took a lot of work, and it really, really shows. I think, honestly, you can see every year of work, and they used some ideas from basically everyone's version of the Haunted Mansion. Like, nothing went to waste.
I like, and this is also it's not necessarily just a haunted house thing for Disney. I think this is a global Disney park thing, but it's very evident in Haunted House. I love that it is so involved. It's not just a ride. Like it's not like, because you can go to any theme park and there's rides, but there's no parks like Disney where it's an experience.
Yeah. So true. One more just like fun fact. Ex Atencio also recorded the drafts of the narration for the ride while they were working on the project, but they don't use his voice in the final attraction. As many Disney fans know, they hired voice actor Paul Frees to voice the ghost host. But the funnest of fun facts is that Ex Atencio's voice actually makes a guest appearance in the Haunted Mansion. He's the voice of the tour interruption host if the ride stops. The line that says, like, playful spooks have interrupted our tour. That's actually him, the Imagineer.
Oh, that's cool.
Which
that's
is really
nice. Yeah, I like that. Awesome. And speaking of the ride stopping, we should talk about another marvel of Imagineering from the Haunted Mansion project, the Omnimover. So initially, the Haunted House was designed to be a walk-through attraction. By the late 60s, it was obvious that the Haunted Mansion would need to become a ride for the sake of capacity. The Omnimover vehicles were designed by WED transportation designer Bob Gurr, who had been inspired by the continuous loop of ride vehicles in the General Motors exhibit at the 1964 New York World's Fair. He added a number of elements to the system, most notably a means by which the Omnimover could turn on an axis and aim at a scene, directing the rider's attention precisely where the attraction designer wanted it to go. The Omnimover also keeps the guests a specific distance from each effect and allows a rider a narrow point of view. This enabled the Haunted Mansion's designers to design the attraction cinematically. The mansion has set scenes, much like a movie does, and most visitors see pretty much exactly the same thing, no matter where they try to look. And fun fact, the ride vehicles are called Doom Buggies, which is
adorable.
Yeah, and also makes more sense to what we said earlier.
Yes. And just really quick before we wrap up the history of it, I just wanted to mention another famous voice actor involved in the ride narration. Eleanor Audley, as the voice of Madame Leota, is my favorite character in the Haunted Mansion attraction, and she also famously voiced the Wicked Stepmother in Cinderella and Maleficent in Sleeping Beauty.
Yes, I love this.
Yeah, me too. But her face, Madame Leota's face, is actually based on the face of a wet Imagineer, Leota Toombs, and they also named Madame Leota after her. So there's still a ton more to learn about the making of the Haunted Mansion out there if you're interested. Doombuggies.com, again, has interviews, newspaper clippings, radio broadcasts, like anything that ever happened in history, even sort of related to the creation of the Haunted Mansion, they have it. If you're into that sort of thing, I definitely recommend that you check it out. And then connecting everything to today, again, if you want to visit the Haunted Mansion, it's still open in Disneyland Park, pretty much unchanged except for the occasional refurb. Just a few notable updates and throughout the years. The Bride in the Attic was updated twice, once in 1994 and again in 2006, mainly making the effects better. Like usually when they do stuff to the ride, it's just because technology has advanced and they realize they can make something like a little cooler or more convincing. So for example, in 2004, Madame Leota's crystal ball now floats above the table. She was originally just sitting on the table. And in 2015, they added the Hatbox Ghost to the attic scene, which was a effect that they actually tried to do and then scrapped. Like, it never made it into the original attraction. And all of a sudden in 2015, they're like, wait a minute, we can do that now with projection mapping. And so
I like that.
they went back into the archives, got this old design, fixed it, and now he's in the attic scene in the Disneyland attraction. Also, 2 years ago, they added him to Walt Disney World, or maybe it was last year, but it's in a stupid place in the ride. And this isn't the time for that complaint. We're talking about Disneyland, which is a mostly perfect Haunted Mansion experience. Also, since 2001, Disneyland does this cool thing. It's a seasonal overlay called Haunted Mansion Holiday. So between Halloween and Christmas, they go in and retheme the entire attraction to The Nightmare Before Christmas, and it looks so cool. I've never been on it in person, but they have a ride-through on the DVD for The Nightmare Before Christmas. And basically they like take out half the animatronics and replace them with just as impressive like Nightmare Before Christmas animatronics. The whole ride audio, it's like an entirely different ride.
Oh, that's cool.
It's very, very cool. And I've also heard people who aren't that into The Nightmare Before Christmas, the movie, after they go on this ride overlay, all of a sudden now they love The Nightmare Before Christmas. Like, it's that good.
Oh, nice. I want to go.
The reason they don't do it at Disney World is because a lot of people's trip to Disney World is their like one trip they're ever going to go on.
Mm-hmm.
Most people go there as like a save up for years and years, and this is like little Billy's one trip to Disney World, and so they wanted little Billy to have the Haunted Mansion experience that is like the classic Haunted Mansion, but in Disneyland they get a lot of locals, a lot of annual pass holders, so they do a lot more seasonal overlays than Disney World does.
Okay.
But also, as I mentioned a couple times, Walt Disney World and Tokyo Disneyland both have their own Haunted Mansions. And at these parks, they were opening day attractions. Tokyo Disneyland also does the Nightmare Before Christmas overlay. I guess they have more annual pass holders, or they're just lucky, I guess.
Yeah. Cool.
So now that we're caught up to the present, usually this is where we have our etiquette segment, but for October, since we're being all spooky all the time, we've decided instead of the etiquette segment, we're just going to use this part of the episode to discuss some more mid-century spooky entertainment. So Gonzalo, what do you have today?
So today I have what I consider one of my favorite haunted house thingies. I don't know why I did that with my hands. But it is the House on Haunted Hill movies. So I say movies because it's really one movie, but it was remade in 1999, I believe. But the original House on Haunted Hill with Vincent Price, which is who was an amazing actor, is from 1959. So I want to talk a little bit about that one. Okay, so again, the big main premise is that this eccentric millionaire, Frederick Lauren, who invites 5 guests to a party for his 4th wife, Annabelle, promising $10,000 to anyone who stays the night. And tensions rise and a series of eerie events unfold. Annabelle and her lover, psychiatrist Dr. David Trent, conspire to murder Frederick, but their plan goes awry when Nora mistakenly shoots Frederick with a blank gun. In a shocking twist, Frederick reveals he knew of the plot all along, leading to a chaotic climax that leaves both Annabelle and David dead, while Frederick claims he is ready to face justice for his own alleged crimes. Sorry, I should have done spoiler alert before. That was the quick and dirty of the plot summary.
Was the remake any good?
The remake is good because it has Jeffrey Rush as the millionaire, which you may know from Pirates of the Caribbean. He is Captain Barbossa.
He sure is. Ooh, neat. Look at us going full circle.
I know.
We went from Haunted Mansion to Pirates back and forth the whole episode.
Yeah.
That was the perfect topic to pick. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And so
that is that, and that is. I guess we don't have to approve it because there's no etiquette segment.
Nope. Well, I approve of everyone rewatching anything with Vincent Price in it. I actually plan on watching one of his movies this Halloween season.
Nice. Well, guys, it looks like with that we have landed the Omnimover. Thank you guys all for listening today. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to the show and tell a friend.
You can also follow us on Instagram at MCL Podcast or on YouTube at MCL Podcast. And there, if you want to reach out to us, you could send us a DM on Instagram, or you can reach out to us through our send us a text message feature in the show notes. And if you do, we'll read it on the next episode.
Yep. So send us some fan mail, guys. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Mid-Century Living. Please subscribe, tell your friends, and leave a review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also follow us on Instagram at MCL Podcast. See you next Friday.